alfalfa after oats, or are you seeding alfalfa with the oats, or how are you getting that alfalfa established?
Are you you're talking to me?
Yes.
Actually, what we're doing is we're going in after wheat, trying to go with August 15th seeding for the alfalfa, and then we leave it for the whole next year. So we put out our alfalfa after we harvest our wheat.
This was alfalfa after oats. Was that Darrell?
No,
Alfalfa after oats.
oh, Darryl, it was you.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, everybody's got a different method, you know. I've been always underseeding my oats with alfalfa. And I put plenty of oats down because I'm looking for a seed crop. And I put plenty of alfalfa seed down. I'm in that 20-pound range. And I took my grasses out of my mixes years ago. I started with farmer's gonna buy hay. He wants top quality. So I'm an early cutter. I don't let it get coarse. I have an alfalfa stick here. Actually, Andres has got it. And you can pass that around if you got it handy.
Don't have it here.
Oh, that's all
Get it
right.
for lunch.
You're fired.
Aaron, is that true?
I'm not leaving without it.
We'll get it.
When you're saying underseeding, you're seeding them at the same time?
Correct. I seed them at the same time. Yep. And I've got a pretty nice drill. It's not a no-till. And, you know, I'm using conventional tillage. You know, sometimes after beans, a lot of times I can run in there with my field cultivator finisher type piece that I got, and one pass and I'm planting it. And I'm planting it early. I like to get that in early, and it can take the weather. And I just plant them heavy. I plant almost 4 bushel of oats, which is, you know, traditionally people would say, you know, that's too much. But if you take in, we got our own combine and we've done this for a long time. So when that oats is ready, we go take the heads. We just take the top 5 inches and get that grain off there, you know, and just then see what the weather does. And then we'll just recut, leave about 2.5, 3 inches. We won't skin the ground. We don't like scalping that. I don't think that's a good idea. You can take and risk your alfalfa loss. And so we leave a little bit. We go back and recut, then take our straw. We've got a good market for straw. We've got 86 dairies around our business, so I've just been blessed to live with that dairy rotation and grow what I can sell to them. So a lot of times we don't take those 1,800 bales of hay. Some of them go 200 yards to the neighbor. Some of them go 3 miles. Some of them go 4 miles. Some of them go 5 miles. You know, so we're pretty lucky. You know, that keeps us a simple rotation. And I recommend that when you're starting in organics, don't make it too complicated.
Great. Question back here, comment?
Yeah, Harold, did I hear you say you plant some radishes with your wheat?
Yeah, this is the first year we've done it, but we've been looking at it for a couple of years now.
This is winter wheat?
Yes, so we planted them 1st of October. They got about that tall, and they grew right with the wheat.
And they'll winter kill.
Yeah, they're winter, yes.
Okay, the reason I asked is for some reason, I planted barley this year, and when I took the barley off, I had underseeded it with clover, and I found a couple of turnips growing with that clover. And I was amazed. It didn't look like it impacted the barley at all. So that is something I'm going to try this year. I'll let you know. But I was curious when you had planted the radish. Okay.
Other questions? Yeah, Andy?
Did you plant the radish off-row? Or did you just broadcast the radish? Were you concerned about the radish affecting the establishment of the winter wheat?
No, we increased the seeding rate, you know, of our weed a little bit, or of our drill, but we seeded it right in with the wheat. We mixed it in with the wheat and pox.
So it went right in the same row?
Right in the same row.
Wow. And you didn't see it, so you look like you had a good stand of wheat going into this winter?
Yeah, there'll be a picture this afternoon.
Okay. Are you planning on coming back and raw seeding out the clover still? Or?
Yes.
Molly, have a question?
My question was for Mark. How have you been have you been doing the roll rye with edible beans, you said?
Yes,
And how's it been working? Because the edible beans usually don't get as big with the.
right. We did them with
These
black.
are-
We did them with black beans, and we did a transitional field that was very difficult because we didn't have really good soil health. We had angular, blocky soils. And typically we're looking for around that 2,000 pounds, and these ran about 900 on the blacks. But since then, we've been adding a few things to make up for that as we're transitioning and getting soil health. So the field, picking the right field certainly is a big issue. I would always plant soybeans, before I did, any kind of black beans, if I had a difficult field for soil till and soil health, because they're much more forgiving. But we have gone in and we plant humic now in the row when we blow in the beans, and that makes a big difference. We're also trying some compost and some other things too. Since we have a pneumatic system, we also can put in SOP and a few other things as well. So we're starting to play around with what we can do to maximize those yields, but certainly if you don't have soil health, it's hard to get top yields. So that's why we're no-tilling in a big way, but soybeans are much more forgiving than dry edibles.
Yeah, a question for Randy about the sunflowers and the wheat. I assume that the wheat's following after the sunflowers. Two questions. One is, do the sunflowers dry out the soil a lot because they have that ability to dry soil for getting your winter wheat established? And the second question is, are the sunflowers a volunteer problem in your winter wheat? Because they have a reputation for being a volunteer problem in the next crop.
They do dry the soil out, that's true. They use up a lot of moisture. They're also good at finding moisture when there isn't any, which is why we planted on some of the lighter ground. This year, we're going to try it on some irrigated ground, so that won't be a concern. I'll get back to you on whether or not that works well. And the other question about whether or not
Volunteer problem.
Volunteer problem, thank you. And no, we didn't, and I was so surprised. I was worried about that very thing, and we had some that we picked a lot of them, went great, and then we got a little bit of rain, and so when we got back to the other ones, it was dry, and so they shatter a lot. And we got a special head to try to offset that and did several things to try to help alleviate the shattering problem, but still, it's pretty easy to lose some sunflowers out there if you don't get there and harvest. We did have that problem, and it still wasn't an issue, but we planted rye after that and harvested the rye. Rye, of course, competes extremely well. And so what we had was rye pretty close in the rotation because we planted rye, worked it down, planted the sunflowers, harvested the sunflowers, and then put rye in for the actual crop that we harvested. And it was really good on beating up the weeds, and as I say, the sunflowers did quite well. The next year we tried sunflowers. They didn't do as well because I think we just planted too early, it was a little too cold, and they didn't get up and get ahead of things as much.
Mark, do you have follow-ups?
Randy, is head rot a problem in this area? Do you think we can reliably grow sunflowers? We've been looking at it too, and that's always the question: can you get it to harvest? What do you think?
We've been lucky 2 years in a row, and it's the only 2 years I've ever grown them, so I'm really not qualified to answer that. We've been lucky, but we've had it on light ground and got them in, a little bit later, or I should say, got them in just right. We waited to plant them instead of getting them too early so they slow down or get off to a slow start. Once you get them established, they really grow well and compete well, and obviously a real pretty crop. And then they pay reasonably well, especially the first year. The second year, not quite so much. But they're going to be a good rotation for us because they are, I think, good with taking care of keeping your weed bank minimized. But we didn't have hardly any disease at all, but I think we would if you ever shortened your rotation up. You need, I think, 5 years on sunflowers.
All right, great. Question here?
Second year transition, putting in oats. We're putting in a cover crop late, going into corn for 2018. My question is there a mixture of cover crop that I could consistently give nitrogen credit to that would provide the nitrogen for the coming corn crop, or am I going to be adding additional nitrogen no matter what I do. I don't have the biology yet built up in the soil in just a second-year transition.
We've thought that very thing several times, and are you talking about planting the hay or the alfalfa or the legume with the oats or after the oats? After. You just don't have enough time sometimes to get it to grow. Obviously, the longer it goes, the better off you are, and so you need to give it some time to make that happen. But it can be supplemented with manure, and whatever you plant for cover crop works as a catch crop to stop the manure from getting away, and will make that grow faster, and then you'll have some to break down the work with. Does that sound reasonable? When you were talking about the making sure that you don't have the nitrogen tie-up. If you had the manure in there, you'd have some to break it down. Plus, if you're growing a legume, it would bust it up even better.
Right, so it's complex. So the main thing is when can you get it planted, but
Third week of July.
so you should be able to, so in that system, you're gonna have plenty of time for a legume to get going, right? Or that's when you're planting or harvesting?
I hope to harvest the oats mid-July.
Mid-July.
I hope to be able to plant the cover crop the day afterwards.
So what I like, I think that you could go with a Berseem clover or a crimson clover. I've been really liking the results we've seen with the crimson clover in terms of I didn't show that data, but there's a little bit of a different effect we're seeing, where we're seeing a little bit better, more of a yield bump following Berseem clover for some reason, and a bigger nitrogen credit from crimson clover compared to Berseem clover. But they both gave us extra rotational benefits, so to speak. So I'd say if you go with something, if you want to grow some nitrogen, have one of those two in there. I also like, when we grow it, we weren't growing it in a mixture, we're just growing it as a pure stand. And in winter kills, and we had really nice dead biomass in the spring that provided soil coverage. So sometimes you don't get enough live biomass before winter kills, but those two we had quite a bit of biomass that it really provided this nice mat on that soil surface. Now, if you want to go into a mixture, then it's the other things that you want to use. If you have some compaction alleviation, or you want to put another grass crop with it to try to get some other soil building benefits. But I like those two covers for it. I think that'll be that would be something I'd recommend.
One of my friends used sun hemp after wheat and had excellent results with it. He had to get it in right away because you got to have the growth. But timing wise, it worked out well for him. We have done the crimson clover after wheat, and I'm just using wheat because that's what we've done. We've done the crimson clover, but we've had mixed results. If you have plenty of rain, fine and dandy. If you have a dry summer, dry August, dry September, it can be iffy for us.
So I just make a comment about the legume founders?
Yep.
Just to note, and Jackie might have talked about this yesterday, in sun hemp included with any of these legumes, you want to make sure that you have the correct inoculant and make sure it's an organically approved inoculant too. I'm not sure, sun hemp's a little bit more of a novel crop up here, and I'm not sure how easy it is to get the correct inoculant, but you have to be a little bit cautious that you're not going against the organic standard with what inoculant you choose, but there are very good ones available.
For sun hemp, you use the same inoculant, it is organic, as for peanuts.
Oh, really?
That makes sense. So just one follow-up. I've actually seen that too. The Berseem clover tends to have a nicer looking stand compared to the crimson clover. Although in these studies that we've done, the crimson clover, sometimes it looked a little bit patchy, but we were still seeing this positive effect. So even without as beautiful of a stand as compared to what Berseem gave us, we still saw these benefits. Now we'll have over 2 years, but that's what I thought was interesting about that.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Does the clover establish quick enough to cover to prevent, from weed suppression and developing under scrap over the top?
Are you talking about, I think the question was, does it create enough competition to suppress the weeds after a small grain?
Right.
Yes. We planted some red clover after wheat this year, and the weeds did come in a little bit because it doesn't fly out of the ground like other crops do. This was irrigated, so we were able to put water on it, so that was an issue, but we also had really good rain, so you can't tell the difference between the field and the corners. But we ended up going out and mowing it this year just to try to knock the tops off of the weeds before they went to seed. So no, not always, and you're right, they don't come out of the ground as fast.
I agree with, yeah, that's,
I have a question, and it may not apply to some of you, but in terms of renting ground, one, does that impact how you manage the rotations? And two, just curious how you know, some of the agreements with landowners.
The question was about renting ground from people in the back.
That has a big effect on what we do. Of the 2,300 we farm, 2,000 of it, or roughly give or take a few acres, is rented ground. And we do a variable lease, a variable rent lease, where depending on the crop, the landlord makes more money. I haven't found an organic landlord yet that didn't like a return off their investment. So that's one of the reasons that we have a pretty tight 3-year rotation.
What about the transition? I mean, do you ask for a certain number of years in the contract to get through the transition?
No, our lease rate is such that we can handle going through transition at an affordable cash rent lease. And then we have a percentage above a gross return on the farm. So it goes to 2/3 to us, 1/3 to them after, depending on the lease rate, but can be over $600 or $800 an acre. So it just depends on the quality of the land and, you know, what they want to do as far as a base rent.
Do other panelists have thought about rental ground and rotations?
That's a big factor around us. I think I mentioned that I'm parallel production, and for sure the stuff that could work quite well for organic production is the stuff that's not in there. We just lost a piece of ground that was right out behind our shop to a huge warehouse, and that wasn't organic, and that's why it's in the development path. I've lost a piece before on the last year of transition. Guy sold it, and somebody built a building on it. So you try to get out there ahead of that, obviously. I found that the landlords, a lot of times, especially, and it's becoming more and more, are very receptive to the organic idea, and they will work with that. And if you explain to them what you have to go through, I've had 2 or 3 of them that are all aboard on that. I've also had one guy offer another $5. This was a few years ago, and I went in and I talked to the lady and told her the whole story, and she looked me in the eye and said, "I'd rather have the $5. Talked about wells, talked about runoff, talked about carbon, talked about everything I could. She'd rather have the $5. Exactly what she said. You haven't met one yet that doesn't want to return. So it's tough. It is hard to do that, but you got to be careful about not spending all that time and investment and effort to get it all the way certified just to lose it, because, as Mark said, you like to get things built up so that you can have your home run year be right out of the chute to pay back for the transition part. Transition part can be pretty tough. Mark's doing the best job I've seen of coming up with specialty crops or specialty things or something that you might get a premium for, but growing non-organic wheat without much fertilizer and maybe a few weeds is a tough road to hoe, for sure.
We do not take on a farm that doesn't have a 5-year lease on it. So, and the landowners that we have are ones who have come to us to farm organically. That's probably kind of a strange situation up here, because I think organic is more accepted here, but what we're running into is the next generation of landowners are definitely more interested in what's going on in the soil than what the dad was. And so, you know, they're the ones who are coming to us. I've actually diverted 3 farms in the last 2 years in our county to other organic startup farmers. It's not about how many acres you can farm, it's about what you can handle, and I want to see it transition organic. So, but we don't take on a farm unless we have a 5-year lease.
If we're going to transition, we do 7-year leases with that transition, and most of our organic acres, we want a 4-year lease. There's a tremendous amount of buildup. And you can imagine somebody going conventional, going away from no-till, and expressing all that soil organic matter that you've built, and releasing it and getting a big bang. So if somebody's interested in cherry picking top land rents, that's not somebody I want to be involved in. So we're thinking long-term, next generation as well, and what all those benefits are. So yeah, it's a difficult issue depending on where you farm you got.
Questions? That one back there?
This question's for Harold. The two questions. One is the alfalfa that you're putting in, are you harvesting it? And going to a simple rotation of corn, beans, wheat, and maybe something else, is there, I guess, where does the market, I guess, where do you sell, if you have 50,000 bushels of corn to sell, something like that, where do you take that?
Did you hear that question? The first question was, do you harvest your alfalfa? Second question was, in your rotation, where are your markets for your different crops in your rotation?
Well, we have a combination. We sell some to grain millers. In fact, I've got a story about that I was going to tell, and I'll tell it real quickly here. My nephew and one of my landowners are doing grass-fed beef, and they're building up a business, and they're building up their herd, and they're going to be, this year I think they got 75 animals. So they use our buffer strips, use some of our cover crops to feed their livestock. But anyway, Uncle Harold was going to be a nice guy in August of 2015, and he air seeded 107 acres of rye into standing corn. I don't know how it was in Wisconsin, but this is one of those times when Mother Nature either rained on the just or didn't rain on the unjust, whatever. Anyway, we didn't get any rain, and we went in and we harvested that corn, and I had 3 loads one night rejected over at grain millers for rye. We flew the rye in, and we never had rain, so a lot of times that rain will bring the rye out of the whirl of the stalk, but we never had any rain. So when it dropped into the whirl, when we came along and harvested, the combine picked up the rye in the corn. And so we had to bring back all that corn, and we ran it through a rotary screener, and then took it back, and it didn't get rejected the second time, but good old Uncle Harold had a little lesson in what to do and what not to do when it comes to cover crops. So if you're going to feed it, fine and dandy, but if you're going to a food grade, as far as we have a combination. We sell to an organic dairy, so some of it's feed grade, some of it's food grade, goes to grain millers. We're experimenting now. We're going to talk about a little this afternoon. We're building a flour mill, and hopefully we're going to also grind our own polenta. So the other thing we've done is we've diversified out, and instead of having all those acres of organic corn, we're raising some seed corn, organic seed corn. So we're diversifying out. This coming year, we're going to have a 50-acre, maybe an 80-acre popcorn contract. So there's just a number of different things. That not everything's number 2 yellow organic corn.
Was the second question whether they harvest their own alfalfa or whether they hire that out?
Yeah, whether they harvest their own alfalfa.
Okay, we have one farm that is a 4-year rotation. It was a requirement of the farm. It was actually the first farm that I started transitioning. And so we harvest that ourselves. When I started out going organic in 2005, I went cold turkey and I raised oats, hay, and then went into organic corn on the 3rd year. And so I was oats, alfalfa, and then organic corn. And we got up, when we were at 1,000 acres, that was 250 acres of hay that we were doing 3 times in the summertime. Then when you had your stubble crop, took your stubble crop somewhere between August and September, there was another 250 acres. So, it's one thing to get 500 acres of alfalfa harvested that third time, it's another thing, turn around and realize you've got to get rid of it. And so, you know, we had 2 flatbeds around, we were selling hay for under production cost. That's when we pulled our reins back and went, you know what, it's more important to have the soil building. So we don't take very much of our red clover for hay, very little actually. We've got enough buffer strips and small pastures and stuff like that, that's where most of our hay comes from for the grass-fed beef, plus they rotational graze a couple of small pastures. So we don't do a lot of harvesting. The alfalfa we do for that one landlord, it's 30 acres, and we try and put as much up in small squares, and part of that is they've got goats and they want, you know, the hay themselves. But then we sell to a few organic smaller farmers who have livestock. But I think it's really important to leave that clover grow. I'll be honest with you, I don't like to take anything off the farm other than grain. So anytime we've got something planted, we try and, even if we mow it down, and, you know, we mow it with a bat wing and try, you know, we do that on our cover crops because of the weeds. I mean, you know, we'll get some green foxtail coming in late season. You know, there might be a few of those ugly giant ragweeds that'll make it through. So.
Is anybody, I know some of you guys are flying in some stuff. Anybody doing any cover cropping into corn that is knee high, let's say? I've seen the UW doing that and some Iowa videos. So the seed germinates and then the corn shades it out, goes dormant, and then you pick your corn and you have a lush cover crop underneath. At least that's what makes it look like.
Right, in a perfect system, it always works like that. So, and we played around with it, and a lot of what we're trying out is just in different soils, will it grow, right? And so that's the trick on getting cover crops into that corn phase rotation and planting it early. So the trick is that if you can get the corn or a cover crop drilled in around V4, V5, and then the cover crop will just hang out in that understory, and then when you go to harvest the corn. And we've tested radish, red clover, and winter rye. And they all grow. I was surprised how well radish performed in our trials. I thought radish would be a bit wimpy, but it did all right. Clover did pretty well, and I like clover, this is sort of the next generation of I'd like to test this more because I think that would be a huge gain if we can get more legumes in and hangs out in the understory, and then it could be supplying nitrogen. Now, if your next crop is soybean, it won't matter as much, but if you have another grain in rotation, it'd be pretty beneficial. The grasses, and the way the grasses grow, they don't do as well in the understory, right? They get kind of spindly because they keep reaching up for that sunlight. They get kind of wispy. Although when we have taken off the grain, the winter rye seems to come back, and we have nice coverage in the spring without the next spring, without probably too much biomass, like we've seen like in that study, the results of that study, where there's a lot of biomass. So there's some potential to be beneficial. Now, the last year we tried it, the corn really took off on us. We had really great corn, so the corn grew too fast, if that makes sense, right? So it choked it out a little too quickly, and we didn't get as good establishment in the understory. So it also has to do with how fast your corn is, and maybe there's some variety-specific things, how tall your corn is, the shape of the way the leaves play out in terms of how much sunlight gets through as the canopy, as the crop grows. So there's a lot of little intricacies that are going to play into that. But so in 2 or 3 years, I would say we had really good success. In 1 year we didn't, and it was with the trade-off of like, well, we had pretty good corn yields. So,
my thoughts on doing that were maybe using a rotary spreader to put it in instead of tilling it in, and then coming through with the last cultivation to work it in the soil. Does that have any merit, or do you think you need to drill it in?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, do you need to drill it in? Drilling obviously gives you the best seed to soil contact. I haven't tried any. I haven't seen stuff with any other method other than drilling. I don't know if anyone else here has.
Yeah, we do.
Do you do, Randy? Okay, I just seen a couple of pictures that, I think it was University of Nebraska, and what they did is they've offset their corn planter, and they're using their corn planter.
Yep.
And that did a lot better job just because of the seed to soil contact, getting it placed right, getting the proper rate. You know, when you're out there spinning something, you know, you don't know where it's gonna land, but they're planting dead center between. So, you know, it looked really good actually. And it got about, you know, this tall before it canopied. They had several pictures of it. So if you look that up, you know, just go to the Google and look up, interseeded cover crops in corn. I think you'll hit that window.
The other factor that is row spacing. We aerial seeded late in the fall and then into standing corn. And actually we have tram lines at 120 inches to interface our field and 15-inch corn. The only place we had 0 rye was in the 30-inch rows. So row spacing can also be a huge driver to that.
But shut out the canopy.
And also the crop, I mean, popcorn, I think, would work just awesome. Sweet corn that you get off early could work very well. There's other corn crops, you know, that we can look at, I think, that have that potential, maybe even blue corn. Maybe Randy can talk to that a little better, but something that doesn't take all the sunlight away, you know, and you're still trying to hold the weeds back.
You touched on it a little bit, Mark, you did too, about the sweet corn. As the canning factories, canning crops are great rotation. They work really well because they're usually short and you can have the time after they're harvested. But as Mark said, if you get any grain inside of the peas or the snap beans or the sweet corn or anything like that, they've got a real issue with that. The canning factory representative came around and said if there was one sprig of rye in the peas, they would reject the field. So it's a big concern for them because of their, you know, they've got to call it gluten-free. And believe me, for people that are sensitive to gluten, find that one, and that'll be the guy that gets that can, you know that. And so you have to be careful with it, come back and bite you. And I'd never heard about it hanging in the world. That would be a severe case of bad luck there.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm fortunate in, I've got a 26-year-old agronomist who grew up organic, and he's like a puppy on paper when it comes to no-till organic, so he's got me working on the rye. The thing that I'm concerned about with us is we're going to be food-grade wheat, so we're going to have to put this on our food-grade milling quality grain, so we're going to have to put our no-till rye, our no-till soybeans on rye on the ground. We're going to put the rye in the fall. So, I mean, we're going to have to be careful about what we do with that. But one of the things this young man's talking about is he wants to take my insecticide boxes off the planters that we don't use anymore and make a cedar drum that we can put things in the row and try like putting red clover on when we plant the corn. And a few other things that he's got going on in his mind. And I'm not going to dampen youthful exuberance. So I'm pretty excited about some of the things he's talking about. But we got to revamp our John Deere boxes in order to make that work.
Time for a couple more.
Have you seen, you mentioned Nebraska seemed to do the best in the system of feeding at P5 or so. You said that's pretty, have you seen any issue with bolting on Nebraska, or do they get stuck with the
I think that question was for Matt about, or one of you about brassicas bolting.
I don't know what Nebraska. Yes, about Nebraska stuff. I don't know if you had any insight.
Oh, brassicas.
Oh, brassica, not Nebraska. With the early planting, yeah, if you plant them too early, yeah, they could bolt. The stuff we've seen is that they tend to just shut down, so they're not going up like the grasses. Where I haven't seen any bolting. If anyone else has.
All right. Couple more.
Yeah. You know, I've found with interseeding into corn that annual ryegrass was really a nice crop because it really gave you some structure to drive on, and it really helped the soil. And I'm kind of curious, it's interesting when you talk with grazers, they're all about grass. And yet when we talk about grain crop people, they don't get into grass or perennial grasses or grasses, but they're awful good for building soil structure. So I'm kind of curious to ask the panel, what's been their experience with getting grasses, in particular annual ryegrass, into the rotation? I'm not talking about cereals, I'm talking about grasses that make roots.
Go for it, Harold, or Mark, either way.
Annual ryegrass, we used to biologically stimulate our farm. We used it on soybeans and aerial seeded a whole bunch. Damon Raby is our aerial applicator, just does a fabulous job. And that was with the government program, I think it's, 340 or 320, with an EQIP program. And just a nice way to do it, 4 inches high, 28-inch roots. And since that time, any open soil that we have that doesn't get planted is now annual ryegrass. So it's actually been a real problem for us. I'm not sure I would have done that, as we were not even thinking about organic at that point. Annual ryegrass we have on our farm, and wherever there's a blank spot, that's what grows today. And we haven't seeded it since 2011. So a little concerned about that one, but certainly cereal rye is our mainstay, right now that we use, winter rye.
I was going to mimic his statement. Walter, on that Forester farm that you walked with me, there is probably 80 acres of annual ryegrass that comes back every year because it's got so much hard seed that once you got it on your farm, you got it on your farm, because unless you've got Roundup, it's hard to get rid of it. So that's actually what I consider a terrible weed on my farm.
The main issue I have with annual ryegrass is when we do the different trials with it, it sometimes survives the winter and sometimes it doesn't, as you go north-south in Wisconsin. So I have I think it's in Wisconsin, it's gonna be less predictable in terms of what you want. If you want a cover crop that's gonna survive the winter, or one that's gonna winter kill, it's not as reliable. And you know what winter rye is gonna do, and you know what oats are gonna do. And so I think that's also a limitation of its adoption. I know there's a lot of stuff out of Illinois, where it's shown some really big benefits in terms of root mass. As you get into central to northern Wisconsin, are we gonna have enough, if you're gonna plant it later in the year, there's not as much growing season left over where that potential advantage could be realized. So that's a limitation too, maybe as you get further north.
All right, time for one more question.
Have any of you guys tried no-tilling into a short-growing perennial like a mini white clover or a Kent wild white or something like that?
Doing that this spring. We're gonna do that this spring. That young man I was talking about, that my agronomist, last year he got me 25 pounds of a white clover, and it's like a cushion out there. I mean, it's beautiful. And even after it snowed in December, I went out there and it was green underneath, and it was wonderful until I figured out it was $8 a pound. And I was thinking, boy, that's really good stuff. I ought to order more of that. And then I found out what it was going to cost. And so that kind of dampened my excitement. But I really liked it. In fact, I want to put a couple of pounds in with my red clover this year, as far as mixing it in.
It works.
Is it going to be a continuous plant?
Yeah.
Or, is it going to be kind of a perennial planting though, to where you're going to get several years out of that $8 a pound?
No, not in our rotation, it won't.
Okay.
But I would be concerned about the competition. I don't think, especially if you didn't get enough rain, but I would think that the root mass that white cloud clover's got and everything, I think it would be too much competition for the corn crop.
All right.
Can I just make one comment about rotation? I know we're going to get into this after lunch, But an important thing to consider with rotations and food grade grains is that it's absolutely essential to make sure your vomitoxin levels are lower. So you want to make sure that not only do you have an appropriate rotation where you're spacing your food grade grains apart from each other, but also with corn, because vomitoxin is a result of Fusarium head blight, and that can be also harbored on corn. So just in food grade grains, you really want to make sure you're strategizing to maintain quality of your rejected. But we're talking about that after lunch.
Yep, so we have Dr. Julie Dawson talking about that after lunch. So we're gonna have to hold questions and get to lunch, but one last huge thank you to the panelists.